the first time you moved, out of the 10 times you moved, it comes up with no record found, and all of a sudden you have perfect credit. There's nothing in the file. You didn't do that, the computer found it that way. Because mostly people only pick the address that they lived at for the last 2 years, and then they give the next address. But it's how the file is found in the system. Now, credit card fraud, or actually not credit card fraud, identity theft is where somebody steals your identity. There's a group of people in Texas, and the one guy was called Credit Doctors. So they advertise all over the world, Credit Doctors. They figure that the estimate that there's over 20 million people whose files that they ruined. Because what they did is they found this gentleman right here, and they found his name. And then they found another gentleman in another state with the same name. They did a search, and they found him. And this guy had bad credit, and he had good credit. So now, a little magic in the computer. He has good credit, and the guy over here has excellent credit now. Now, he has awesome credit, this guy has awesome credit, but this guy's a lousy bum. And he just doesn't pay his bills over here. So what does he do? He falls back, he gets like 30 or 40 credit cards. The gentleman over here doesn't have credit cards, he just has a mortgage. He goes to refinance his house. The bank laughs at us, laughs him in the face and says, "No way. You have 39 credit cards and they're all
Take your number.
discharged.
I'll call you back.
They've been charged off the accounts, they've never been paid, and there's no way we can refinance your property." This guy comes in the bank, goes talks to the bank president the next day. He says, "I've only had my mortgage, I've worked at my job for 22 years, I pay my mortgage on time with you guys, I don't have any credit cards." But what happened was the guy over here stole his credit. That's called identity theft. Now, under identity theft statute, if you can prove that identity theft took place, you get triple damages. So in your head, you got to think, okay, if somebody's collecting a debt and it's not yours, okay, somebody either stole your identity or something applies under the identity theft statute that allows you to get that damage in a lawsuit against the bureaus. You have the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which you can sue the bureaus against. You also have Fair Credit Billing, which you can sue the original creditors or the collectors for validating it, for not validating the debt, not providing the contract. They validate, they don't validate it, so that act applies to them. So any number of cases here, you have 3 or 4 remedies in a lawsuit, which is good. The really good part is where the debt collector, when you ask the debt collector to validate the debt, and they don't validate it, they just send you a bill under the theory of quantum merit. You owe us $5,000. That's what you owe us. Judge, please give us the $5,000. Here's the order, Judge. They write up the nice little order, $5,000 to this Love, Beal and Nixon law firm. You owe the debt. And the interesting thing is they get a judgment. And you're going, how the heck did they get a judgment? I'd never even heard of this company before. I don't even know who they are. I asked them to validate it, and they went and got a judgment. Because the person was too afraid to go to court to fight him. So he didn't. He go, well, the best thing is I better not show up. Because if I don't show up, then they can't do anything to me. Because I don't know what to do, and I don't want to make a mistake. So I don't show up, so they get the judgment. Now they have a default judgment. Well, technically that was the best thing you could do because you didn't know how to fight them. So you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't enter any evidence in the record. So you didn't do anything wrong because you didn't do any of this, but they had personam jurisdiction. Because you lived within the jurisdiction of the court therefore they could sue you. But then, they didn't enter an affidavit on the record at all. They just said, under the theory of quantum merit, he'd owe us the money. Judge, please make him pay. And the judge issued the order. He didn't show up. So they issued the order, and it's a default. Well, that's pretty funny too, because when they get their judgment, they can't go any farther or enter any other evidence upon the record. The record stands as what they put in is what they got. Which all they did was say under the theory of quantum merit, they didn't put in any jurisdiction, the specific law that was broken. They didn't say the specific contract that was breached. They didn't provide the contract that was breached. They just stated a theory. And the theory was quantum merit that he owed them. But there's a problem with the theory of quantum merit. The theory of quantum merit applies to contractors. It says that you agreed to build a house. I furnished the materials to build the section of the house that you want. Therefore, you owe me the amount of money that it took to build the section of the house and the materials that it supplied for it. That's what it actually means, but that's not how they're using it. So if they don't state it with specificity, or the exact law that you violated, or the exact contract that you violated, there's no evidence on the record. And because you didn't show up for court, because you didn't know how to fight them, so you're all afraid because somebody got a subpoena. And the first time they ever seen a subpoena, the first time I ever got a subpoena, I'm like, oh my God, somebody's suing me. You know? I don't know what to do. Now I get when I say, all right, this is cool. I get to go have fun. I'm crazy, I know, but I mean, that's how I feel if I get one. It's like, all right, I sue them, they get an answer, they give me an answer, I look at their answer, I go, all right, this answer isn't an answer, it doesn't say anything in it. I mean, in the TransUnion suit you have in here, for TransUnion, that, oh man, I still remember that. I'm gonna remember this for the rest of my life. Sitting there saying, okay, everything in the Fair Credit Reporting Act is $1,000. Everything in the Fair Debt Collection Practice Act is $1,000. You can add punitive damages to them. You can add exemplary damages. You can put any other common law damage that you can think of, you stick in a suit. If the judge grants it to you, you get it. So you put everything in that you think that you can get within reason. But what you do is the exemplary, punitive, and any other damage that you can think of, that's the $1,000 for each one that they did. That's the actual. Then you have the amount, there is another one above actual, which is, I forget, I think it's compensatory. I think that's right, but it's the one that states that you get the cost for bringing the suit and how much your time was in bringing the suit. So how much it costs you to do it. You present a bill to the court of the amount of the layout of how much you spent on everything. That's why it's a good thing to take a credit card, pay all your expenses with a credit card, print out the receipt, and it shows you exactly what you paid every time you do it. You make one card available for that, and you do that, and that card is your representation of a third party showing what you paid that they accept in court as evidence. Because any third party that provides evidence on behalf of you is evidence in the court, and the court just accepts it. Credit bureaus, they love credit bureaus. They just accept what the credit bureaus give them sometimes. Like if you are doing a suit against a debt collector, and they're saying that they're trying to collect on behalf of another, if you pull your credit report and it states on the credit report that the account's paid, say ATM mortgage is paid, DFL Collections is trying to collect on the mortgage. But the credit report says the mortgage was paid. Okay, this is how this worked really good in this case. It's funny. Did a motion to dismiss in a collection case. Because they failed to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. We asked for a motion to dismiss for lack of subject matter jurisdiction and failure to state a claim. What the court did is they gave an answer. guy gave an answer to the motion to dismiss. What can you do with the motion to dismiss if somebody answers it? You read what they did.
File an affidavit with it.
No. What you do is you read what they did, you amend the motion to dismiss, which changes the motion to dismiss, which means they have to answer it again.
And you keep changing.
Well, we changed it 3 times.
Okay.
Okay, the third time, then the attorney came back and said, Your Honor, they owe us the debt. You put it in affidavit form what they owe. The attorney put it in affidavit form what he owed, what the guy owed him. The other thing the attorney put in the affidavit was the exact date the account went bad. So then we amended the motion to dismiss again. Guess what we provided? We provided the credit report that stated exactly when did the account go bad, when is the account start to go bad on a credit report? When it was 30 days late. Okay? When it's 30 days late on the credit report is when the statute of limitations starts running on the debt. Their problem was the attorney said they had 6 months left on statute of limitations, which he swore to in an affidavit of the exact amount of time they had left to do the collections. Funny thing is, on the credit report, it shows that the statute of limitations on the debt that they were trying to collect ran out 1.5 years ago. Because we amended the complaint, the attorney put in his lie to confuse the other guy. Then we amended it and put in the evidence as the credit report. What's the court see as a credit report? Oh God, it's a gospel. The court accepted the credit report as evidence, dismissed the case with prejudice because statute of limitations ran out. All you have to do is find out when the account went 30 days late if they're trying to collect it. If you can document when it went 30 days late and anybody else tries to collect it after 6 years, they're toast. And what happened was we tricked them because as soon as we said the statute of limitations ran out and a bunch of other stuff in the motion to dismiss, he goes, well, statute of limitations didn't run out? I'm going to tell them exactly how long the statute of limitations is left, right? Attorneys think attorney, right? Oh, fix that. Well, tell them when the statute of limitations is. The court's going to believe me because why? I'm an officer of the court. Right? So what'd he do? He lied to protect his butt, and he got caught. Because the credit report tells you exactly when the statute of limitations was effective. When the account went 30 days late.
After the account goes 30 days late, what is the statute?
6 years. 6 years to collect debt. 35 years for a state of California tax lien. From the Franchise Tax Board has 30 years to collect debt. The IRS has 20. Well, it has 10 now, but it used to have 20. I mean, basically, you don't want the California Franchise Tax Board on your butt because they'll collect it wherever they can find you. And they have just about as long as half of your life to go try to collect it. Which isn't fun, but.
But the notice of state tax lien is still a administrative notice. It hasn't been adjudicated.
No,
So it's not enforceable.
nothing, the only thing that the IRS can walk in and take property without due process of law. They were given that. They were
They
also,
can seize property.
they can seize it. They were also given the right to go after people for willful failure to file taxes.
But that doesn't have anything to do with an individual willful failure. It
Right, well-
pertains to a person and a corporation who has the sole responsibility of making sure those documents were filed
What's
with
that?
the Internal Revenue Service.
Yeah, because basically what I believe on the tax issue is the fact that the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act applies to the IRS because they are a private corporation that are collecting on behalf of the federal government. The federal government's even stated that they are collecting on behalf of. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act states any third party collecting on behalf of another is and the definition of a debt collector falls within that guideline. Therefore, the act must apply to the IRS.
But there's a difference. Consumer debt has one definition, and tax has a separate definition, and both arise out of the law by two different
Right,
means.
right, but the Restructuring and Reform Act of the IRS applied the Fair Debt Collection Practice Act to them because
To the collection of the.
to the IRS specifically stated that the head of the board, the chairman of the Senate subcommittee that was doing the investigation, ruled that the act applies to the IRS for collecting a debt. They did not state what part of the act, so what we need is a whole bunch of people to litigate under the Fair Debt Collection Practice Act against the IRS. We need a whole bunch of people to also do a 7433, which goes after them for violating their own collection law. Under the IRS code, there's a certain way that they're supposed to collect. They never do it.
Is that exposing their private tax information?
No, that's exposing what it is.
7431.
7433,
That's procedure.
right, it's the,
7431 is-
it's the.
It's the procedure.
It's the
Okay.
procedure that they're supposed to do. They're supposed to follow A, B, and C to collect a debt against you under the IRS code. If they don't do A, B, and C, they can't collect it. And if they do collect it and they didn't do A, B, and C, they committed a federal felony. Because it states specifically in the collection part of the act, the assessment officer must assess the assessment, put it on the assessment enrollment. Then if any officer of the IRS, any agent of the IRS tries to collect more than the assessment that's on the assessment roll, they've committed a felony. And it states that whether it is different, if it's different in any way than what's on the enrollment, they've committed a felony. So if the IRS has admitted that there's no assessment officers, and they don't do assessments, they do audits. Because audits are done by what? Corporations. There is more people than there are corporations. But they've taken how they do audits of corporations and applied that to people, citizens. So they violated the act and they can't collect it. So when they ask, if there's no assessment officers and they admit it, hey, we don't have any assessment officers, you call them up and say, can I talk to the assessment officer? They say there is no assessment officers. If there's no assessment officers, then the assessment must be zero. Because there has to be an assessment. If there isn't an assessment officer to make the assessment, therefore the assessment is zero. Therefore, anything that they ever ask above zero,
It's a felony.
those agents have committed felonies to collect debt above zero. Right? I mean, it's really simple. This is simple because how do you get what they're asking for? Well, you get what they're asking for under a validation of debt under the Fair Debt Collection Practice Act. When they don't provide it, you can sue them under that act. Then you can also sue them under their own collection guidelines because you know good and well that they did not do an assessment because they admit there's no assessment officers. I mean, everybody should write them a letter. Can I please have the name of the assessment officer that does the assessments for the IRS? Please send it to me.
I've got 5 of those letters out right now.
Now what happens is when they send them back, they're gonna say there is no assessment officers, we just have auditors, and here's the name of the auditors that could work on your case for you. So the whole.
Unfortunately, that's not what the law says has to happen.
Right. That is not what the law says it happened. But what it is, what is that doing? That's turning their law upon them. And if the The Senate subcommittee that investigated them states that they have to do the assessment. Well, that's not what they say. Basically, they stated that they have to do an investigation on the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And the act, a part of the act applies to them. We need to know what that part of the act that applies, right? We have to know what that is. Because that could be another remedy. So we have to sue them. We send them a validation letter, and then we sue them in 30 days when they don't provide the correct validation. Validation of a corporation. Earlier, we were talking about corporations and said specifically, how does a corporation work? You have the minutes of the corporation. You have the resolution. Then you have the execution of the resolution, which goes to the party that's supposed to do something. Okay? When you ask the IRS, where's your validation? The IRS needs to go to the corporate officers of the government, which is really interesting. The joint resolution of Congress is a resolution to do what? To enact a law. It's their power to enact a law. So what we really need to know is where in the Congress records does it state that there was a resolution passed allowing the IRS to be their third-party debt collector. If there's no joint resolution of Congress for them to be the debt collector, they can't collect. I don't care what they say. They cannot collect if there's no joint resolution saying that they can go be the collector for the government to go collect on behalf of the government. Because the joint resolution would be this section with the same thing as the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer of a corporation has to all vote to elect, do a resolution, tell somebody how much they owe, and they take, well, this is how much they owe. They take the corporate seal, put the seal over where it says signature on the document, put the document, squeeze it, get the signature to raise up. That's the corporation's signature. The same way, when the corporation applies for credit, it's the same thing. It takes the credit application, the CFO fills it out for them, puts the seal where it says person's going to be, accept this debt and pay the debt. It's the corporation. It goes under the corporation's seal. And sealed by the corporation, states corporation means this is what's supposed to happen. It's accepting that debt. If they don't do that, it's not a corporation, therefore it does not what? It does not exist. If they're not running it like a corporation, and they say it's a corporation, then guess what? It's a general partnership. All corporations revert to a general partnership if they do not have books and records, it's taking the meetings and all that. Everything that they did. The minutes of the meeting, the resolutions of the meeting, the execution of the resolutions. If they don't keep those records, that corporation ceased to exist and you can pierce that corporate veil that day. Now, speaking of which,
You said Pierce?
the corporate veil.
You don't like stab?
Like Perry. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna go all the way. You get two dispute letters in here. One is the first dispute. The second is the second dispute letter.
What page are you?
That is page
9 foot, isn't it?
6, 7, 8 is the first letter. And you know what's really interesting? The dispute form that's on here is actually a tax case. This is actually 3 tax liens that were paid.
It's what now?
The dispute letter in the form booklet says dispute on page 9. Okay? Is disputing 3 tax liens that it says was paid. The reason why they're disputing the 3 tax liens is the tax liens are saying that they were paid in 2004. So they disputed the date as being 1992 when they enacted it, which means what? The tax lien was put on 10 years ago. They have 10 years after the assessment, which is 0, to collect the debt. right? So what they did is they disputed on the Fair Credit Reporting Act, they disputed the debt, asked them to validate it, and asked them to please provide the date. Well, actually, basically it says this tax lien is being reported as past due 10 years and is being reported information that is prohibited. It is prohibited to report anything longer than 10 years of its tax lien. The credit file is reporting that it's 2004, but that's not when the person says that they paid the taxes on it. So it's 10 years from when they paid the taxes. So now, go validate the date the taxes were paid. If they can't validate the date the taxes were paid, what happens? 611 of the Fair Credit Reporting Act states the tax lien has to be removed from the credit report. If it can no longer be verified, it has to promptly be deleted and removed from the file. If it's paid, is the IRS really going to go, think about this. If it's paid, is the IRS really going to go and do an investigation on it? No, they're going after people that they want to collect money from.
They're gonna go to the county courthouse to check on the notice of federal tax lien to get their verification, because that's where
They
the
don't
information.
always file the federal tax lien there. What happened is they released the lien because they paid it. Okay, so it's paid. If the lien is paid, it's released, and it's released from the county recorder's office.
Okay. But you're saying it's still reported on the.
It's
credit-
still being reported on the credit report.
they had
The
done
IRS isn't gonna come in and show proof when it was paid. Basically, what I'm saying is if they cannot validate when it was paid, then it has to be removed from the date that it conceived the report. If they're saying, the person that told me, well, they paid it, when they, right after they put it on, but the IRS is saying that they paid it in 2004.
Okay.
The IRS is not gonna go back and go after and assess and the correct records of somebody that paid them. They're going after the money. They already got money from this guy. He's a good slave. We're gonna go after these guys because they're bad slaves. They didn't pay us. Okay? So they did a dispute. Then they're gonna do a second dispute. When they do the second dispute, it'll probably be removed because the IRS isn't gonna provide any information. They're not gonna talk to them. Because why? Because it's not worth their time because they already took the payment. The other thing is a lot of people haven't filed. And I understand why some people don't file. I understand that part. But if you have a $200,000 house and the IRS say, hey, we're going to take this house. Okay, and you have 200 grand in it and they're going to take it. They're going to take your 200 grand, take the house, kick you out on the street, and you're not going to have a home to live in. Number one thing that nobody knows, I can guarantee that most of the people in this room, I don't know, maybe a couple people in this room, but a majority of the people do not know that you can bankrupt an IRS debt and the bankruptcy will wipe it out.
Chapter 7.
You can do chapter 7, you can do chapter 11, you can do chapter 9, you can do any of them. Whatever one you decide to file. If you're a farmer, you can file chapter 9. Actually, I think farmers, cities, and states are the only ones that can file Chapter 9 bankruptcies. Because that's the qualification, that was the Farmers Bankruptcy Act. Okay, 7, the straight bankruptcy, and wipes it out. Now, there was one lady that filed bankruptcy in Texas. And from what I heard, they had a tax debt of somewhere around $1 million to $1.5 million. The tax debt, basically what happened was she declared bankruptcy. The lady ran in from the IRS, yelling and screaming, "Don't allow her to do it, Judge, don't allow her to do it." And the judge says, well, I'm granting their discharge of this debt. And she says, well, Your Honor, you're gonna have to order them to file taxes every year from that. And the judge says, okay, you're gonna file every year that you work, you're gonna file taxes. That's what the judge told him. Now, if they consider or not whether they're gonna work or not, it's up to them to decide whether they qualify to work to file or not, because the judge gave me an opening. He said, if you still work, you file. And that's where I'm gonna end this section right here, and we'll start in a few minutes. John Doe clause, I love it. My next lawsuit's gonna be against Experian, and it's gonna be a John Doe clause, they're not gonna know who's suing. So, you can file a John Doe clause, but what I did, okay, you sent the 2 disputes out on the previous page, asked them to do the disputes. Then on page 24, is a summons that you do, and the clerk of court signs the summons for you when you file your case. You give them a summons with the case, because you have to serve them. It says, most states say serve with summons and the complaint. And I suggest you always have the sheriff serve. Always have the sheriff serve. The reason why? This case right here against TransUnion took 9.5 months to start. It took me 9.5 months to serve him. I served him by fax, that didn't work. Served him by mail, that didn't work. The only one that responded to the service by mail was TransUnion. They accepted it right away. All right, thanks, we take it. They accepted service. Walmart didn't accept service. AAA Collections didn't accept service. AAA Collections fought tooth and nail. Finally, they weren't allowed to have it dismissed, and they were really upset. I had them served, I had AAA Collections served 5 different ways in one day. It's right around 5. Okay? But I tried every type of service that you're supposed to be allowed to do in court, in a district court, you're supposed to be able to do. In a federal court, you can serve somebody by fax. You can also serve them by U.S. mail. They have to take exception to the service. State court's totally different. State court can ignore everything. You can get everything. They can get dismissed. What I did is I put in every way that you could do it to see what their response was, see how what the court would accept and what the court would accept. And then